and wait, what is the rate, you guys? What is my rate for this job? These are the things that agents and producers take care of for us. I've learned that patience and meditative breathing help a lot. I have to step out of the closet, let the sun shine on my face for a moment, allow time for technical mishaps, and really trying to be patient with yourself. And that can be really tough sometimes. With my experiences so far, the directors and engineers seem to expect these issues to occur. Usually everything goes just fine. And everyone's always patient, but we tend to be hardest on ourselves. The most convenient sessions are the ones where I am sent the scripts and I get to record on my own time and send in the WAV files. These are a relief in many ways, as I can record at night without fear of the leaf blower, the planes rumbling overhead, or the screaming guy. I can take my time and triple check that everything is working smoothly. It's really incredible how we've adapted these days. And despite some things being closed off or just closed, in other ways the world opened up. Recording VO from home has created more opportunities for actors with physical challenges, no longer having to spend time, money, and energy it takes to travel from studio to studio. For bookings, during this time, some of the big studios were sending whole rigs like microphones, iPads, everything, so we could do group recordings from home. It all makes sense, and it should have been this way. It's like the whole world kind of woke up to the fact that we don't have to be certain places. The benefits are huge. We're able to keep hustling and still make our goals happen. We can live where we want to live instead of these giant, stressful cities. Pretty much every day, I think about where I really want to live. I want to feel happy in my environment and have a better quality of life. And as for the world being more open, while I do live in Los Angeles, the majority of my work is from San Francisco, Seattle, Texas, all over, and of course, Norway too. In March of 2020, I was honored to be a part of the ethereal and heartbreaking game Sunlight. I was sent the recording of a man with the most glorious voice, a tone, it was so heartfelt, so dreamy. I was directed to read the script with him, matching his pacing and tone. It was a really cool concept, and I really couldn't wait to experience the finished project. For this project, thankfully, I recorded in the quiet of night with the particles of light guiding me in my dark little closet. It was unlike any project I'd been a part of before, and I didn't know how it would all turn out, or if I did it right, how could I add to this beautiful voice with this sound that's coming out of my mouth now. I imagined everyone that worked on this game in their homes, at their computers, in their recording booths, in the forest, the choir and the artists who created the pathways through the trees, and how it all came together to encapsulate the experience. Many of us were alone in 2020. I was totally alone for months. Journeying through the trees, having the choir rise and fall, and the voices come in and out. The music was so soaring. It was perfect for our times, and it connected with so many of us. It was eerily comforting. It was just beautiful. It was a beautiful experience for a profound time of change. So with all the options available to connect and create in this world now, and the way technology grows and evolves, the world is more open than ever to collaboration. And I found even more than ever, patience and empathy, an open heart and mind are just as important as the technical work we do. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions about anything, I'm here.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do we have anything on the stream? Okay, not yet. Do we have one here? Thanks, Nikki. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Sorry, I was stammering.
So I'm not a voice actor like you. I just make games. So what is the best way for us as the people who make games to interact with you? who's gonna bring what we're creating to life?
Oh, wow. I think something that I really love are well-written characters. It's a lot of times I'll get auditions, but I don't see what the character looks like. I just get like the copy. Like, for example, for Tales of Monkey Island, when I auditioned for Morgan Le Fay, I had no idea what she looked like until the game came out. I was like, wow, she's kind of a babe. But, but yeah, it's like just clear descriptions. Even if there's not a picture, just having a description, characteristics, just the communication of what you guys see. But also being open to something new you may hear when we do the auditions. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, we've got another question here. I'm just going to walk across the room. You speak so descriptively, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, I was totally there,
Good.
in the forest and in the closet and particles of light. No, it's really beautiful. You can feel you in your presentation. It's really great.
Thank you. Thanks.
That was nice segueing over to all the way from there to here.
It was.
Hi, Nikki.
Hiya.
I was wondering, do you have any tips for people that want to make a first-time home studio with voice acting?
Oh, wow. Well, for me, I bought some moving blankets because I have a very tiny, like this big closet. It's real small. Just make sure you have it soundproofed. You have to do studio tests. I usually have to do studio tests to make sure that there's no like weird sounds. But if inevitably, whenever I'm gonna do a session, someone starts doing something outside. But I think it's just the preparation. Like something that's really important, I think I skipped a part in here because I was nervous, but is being prepared and taking the time to prepare. Checking everything, triple checking it before you start your session. And pillows are great. I mean, I've been in hotel rooms where I'm like bombarded with pillows and just like this, talking into a little microphone. But yeah, it's like preparation, having a good mic, knowing how to, it's just all this new stuff we've had to learn to work now, which is great. Because it makes you value all the stuff that everyone has been doing for us. Like, it's all that kind of stuff. So, preparation, padded room, because you do go crazy sometimes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just got the other side of the room now. Getting fit to this. It's Julie? Yeah.
Hello. I was
Hiya.
just wondering, what do you need from a voice director to perform your best work?
Empathy, a patience and understanding. Something, when I was in The Sims, for the last few expansion packs for Sims 3, I actually got to direct. And they asked me to direct because I'd been doing it for so long. And it's really hard being in the booth for that long it's really fun, but it's a lot on your brain. Like when I did Sims 2, I had no script. I just made it up. And I was doing, I'm not even kidding, 8-hour recording sessions, which is kind of crazy, by myself. And I would be at the end of the day just brain dead, exhausted, because you're like thinking of words and they can't sound like any particular language. So you have to really be mindful. And then towards the end of the day, you start saying terrible things that you don't mean to say, because I'm just trying to put sounds together, like you're using too many P's or too many K's or that kind of thing. So I think there's an understanding and a patience and an empathy and also an understanding of the character to help me understand the character better too, like little tidbits of something or, and the willingness to let you play also. I think that's really important too. Thank you.
Oh, I've got obstacles, sorry.
Thank you, Nikki.
Hi.
I wonder, hypothetically, are there any games or characters you won't ever work with? Like you get paid good, but you say no, no way.
I don't want to work on anything that's gonna hurt anybody or make people feel. I don't know. I mean, I'm all for. I want to play all kinds of characters, but I don't want to do anything that's gonna. I don't know, upset people. I guess, even though. What am I kidding? Walking Dead, everyone hated me. So, I mean, you know, I think it's all in your mind, like how you approach something. And in the end, I'm playing a character. And somebody heard me as this character. And that's an honor in itself. So I would say whatever, you know, I want to do my best, whatever. But I don't want to I don't think I'd want to play like an overtly racist character or anything like that. Hateful, overtly hateful. I don't want to do anything like that. But, you know, I want to play all kinds of characters. And playing a villain was like, for all the hate I got, I still really enjoyed it. So, because it's so not anything I would be cast as normally, so it's pretty fun.
It's cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Is there any more questions? Oh, I have a little one. Have you ever been in a social situation and someone's overheard you speaking to your friends and they're like, oh my God, you're Lily, or something like that? Like, has that happened?
When I worked for a youth hostel in San Francisco for years, and I ran the breakfast, so everybody would come through and I would like give them bagels and coffee and stuff. And one day, this girl came up to me and she was like, are you in The Sims? And I said, yeah, that's random, like. And she said, yeah, well, she was from Austria, and she said her little brother saw me in a video on YouTube. And I was completely blown away by that. But I've never really had anybody. I was at a shop one day by my job, and somebody asked me if I was a voice actor, and I said, yeah. And he said, were you in Psychonauts? And I said, yeah. And he knew I was Lily. I mean, I think that's probably the character I sound the closest to anyways. But it's just little things like that. It's pretty rad, though.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you.
People appreciating your work just for your voice.
Thank you very much.
That's good.
Yeah, thanks for listening, you guys.
Thanks for talking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Talking about, yeah, I'm here, sorry. I'm in the back. Talking about voicing and microphones, through one of our sponsors, Chaotic Eyeballs, we have a little surprise giveaway for some of you a little later. So let's have a 10-minute break, and we'll see what that giveaway is. Okay, really sorry to interrupt your conversations, but we do have some gifts today. Yeah, this is a microphone shield from Chaotica Eyeballs, one of our sponsors.
Come closer, everybody.
Yeah, and we want you really close, like here, the closest possible.
The closer you are, the more big your chances of winning, maybe.
Yeah. So, but the first one we'll give away to a special person here today that might have good use of it. Maybe she could move out of her closet and make some space in a living room or something. So we want to give away the first one to Nikki Rapp. So, yeah. There you go. I hope you can make use of it.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we have picked randomly from the guest list, so I don't know if the winners are here even, but if not, it goes to someone else. And if you don't want it, you can give it to someone else. Yeah, the next person we want to give it away to is Daniel Nielsen. Hey! Here you go. Are you going to use it?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. The next one is Lisa Emilie Irstad. Yay! Oh,
Pastry.
good. And the third and last one goes to Mayu Sivanantam. Hope you can use it too. So, thanks a lot to Chaotica Eyeballs. Maybe there are some tomorrow as well. The rumor says so. So, yeah. Thank you. No, the next talk is soon, not yet. So you can take a little more break. Sorry. Okay, then I'm going to introduce you. Yes, yes. Then we're ready for next speaker. And next speaker on stage has been playing music for 20 years. First rock and metal, and then he studied jazz and classical. In 2014, he started working in the video game industry. I'm talking about Louis Godard from France. We had a really nice chat yesterday about his entry into the industry. He more or less randomly joined a game jam for the first time. And it happened he was the only musician or composer there. And actually, he got hired to his first job right away. So attend game jams, everyone. You never know who else is there and what it can bring. So today he'll talk about his work on the music for the remake of the famous city builder game, Pharaoh from 1999. And what challenges you can meet and should reflect upon as a Western game developer team trying to create another cultural world and music than your own. So let's give it up for Louis Godard. I hope that was right.
Hi, everyone. What a beautiful day today. Just let me do that first. Yay! First time. Close. Nope. Nope. Well, yeah, that's great. Okay, let's get back there. Okay, so as you know, my name is Louis Godard, which is the most baguette name you will hear today. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a freelance musician, composer, and sound designer. Here are a few of the projects I've been working on for the past years. Graphic design is my passion, hire me, and I drink ridiculous amounts of tea every day. So, today I'm going to talk to you about the remake to Pharaoh, which is a city builder. And the title of the talk is Walking on Eggshells with Iron Boots. So, here is me walking on eggshells with iron boots. Just like I said, graphic design is my passion. As in every... This is a money shot of the talk. Nothing happens after that. As in every dissertation, I will first define the terms of the problematic. That's to say, first I'm going to present to you the eggs. That's to say, the context, or what I was about to work on when I started working on Pharaoh. So a little bit of context. Pharaoh is a game that was released at the end of 1999. It's a city builder taking place in ancient Egypt, you don't say. It was developed by Impressions Games, an American studio, published by Sierra. I won't go into the details, I just want you to feel the pressure that I had on myself. It is still really critically acclaimed these days. It scores 8.6 on Metacritic. It sells more than 3 million copies to this day. And the remake is released this year. I can't say when, don't ask. It is a remake. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with the difference between a remake and a remaster, but the idea behind a remake is that we have no source code left and we have to rebuild the game from the ground up. It's developed by a French studio called French Interactive, Go France, and there were around 17 people working on the game, not including people involved in the music production. Last important point, the IP holder is now Activision Blizzard. So, when it comes... I really like this one. What about the original material when it comes to music? It was composed by two American composers, which were in-house composers. They are Henry Beckett and Keith Ziza. There were 50 pieces of music encoded in the highest rate of 160 kbps with a sampling frequency of 22,000 hertz. It is of importance, I will get back to this later. There were nearly 90 minutes of music. And as the rest of the game, there was no source material left, meaning no stems, no separate tracks, no uncompressed files. Some music was only found in .big videos with a German narrator speaking over it, so it was a pleasure to retranscribe music with some German on it. So I had to work with the MP3s that you can still find on YouTube. And that's funny because last modified on the 14th of October, 1999, 3 a.m. almost. It's like, well. So I'll break down for you the different stages that I went through when working on the remake of this music. First, I had the stage of transcription. I had to literally take the pulse of the soundtrack, its difficulties and constraints. The idea was to reproduce the music in MIDI format with simple instrument patches, maximum 10 tracks, with the idea of identifying, obviously, the instrumentation, the important musical elements, that's to say rhythm, melody, motif, harmony, dynamics, character, etc., where there is room for maneuver, because an element in the context of a 1999 video game music is not, it may be fine in this context, but is nowadays not musically pertinent or impossible to identify. That's what happened in some graphic assets when they had to redraw everything in HD. They were like, is that a clay pot or a poo? I don't know. So it's basically a rough musical sketch, but in which every important element in the original music is featured, on which I will then build the arrangements. So just so you can have a glimpse of how many times it takes, it was 3 weeks of work. It took me nearly 1 hour to transcribe 1 minute of music. So just to give you a taste of what's happening, this is, do some people know Pharaoh with their raised hand? You are old, okay? So here is the music that plays in the main menu of the game that will probably raise memories to some of you. Etc. And here is the transcribed version, so don't worry. It's ugly, but, well, it's cleaner. And so on. What came up after transcription? The music is excellent. I won't deny it. It's really amazing. It's a very generous soundtrack. We have to think that in 1999, having 1 hour and a half of music on a single CD was very generous and very long. If you take games like Total Annihilation or Age of Empires 2 or Driver, these are roughly 30-minute soundtracks. The soundtracks present a lot of variety and character. There are not 2 tracks that can be mistaken for one another. Melodies also are total earworms, and I think that people who played Pharaoh can still hum melodies right now, even if it has been 20 years. It really goes along the game feel. The music is not aggressive, and you can play for hundreds of hours. Think about how to optimize your city without getting exhausted by over-the-top music that screams at your face. It is clearly a Western vision of Middle Eastern music, and there's a heavy use of cliches and Orientalisms. 1/3 of the soundtrack is in Hijaz mode, which is called Phrygian dominant. I don't know if some of you are familiar with music theory, which is very Mid-Eastern scale 101. For those who don't know, it's da 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 da. It's the first scale generally that you tackle with when, well, I want to write some Mid-Eastern music. How do I do that? Yeah, you take this scale, and there you go. Those Mid-Eastern music elements are mixed with orchestral music and choirs. The result is a very peplamish sword and sandal soundtrack, which is made at 95% with synthesizers. There are like some live percussions, but most of it is synthesizers. The soundtrack is adored by the community, and it is seldom criticized. I have not read a lot of bad things about this soundtrack. Maybe just, yeah, this track is a bit loud, but mostly it's a legend to people who played it in their childhood or in their teenage years. The instrumentation is made from 90s synthesizer patches. There is no precise instrumentation. When I talked with Keith Ziza, one of the original composers, he told me there were like patches like Mid-Eastern flute or reed instruments. So there is no real instrumentation per se. There are some musically dubious stuff, like strange quantization when it comes to rhythm, some strange pitch accuracy, but that often comes from a will of making the music less computerish, and that's something that we have to credit the composers for. And finally, it's certainly not Egyptian music, let alone ancient Egypt music, which we have no trace of since it was oral tradition and it's music that goes back 5,000 years ago, so we have no trace of it. Also, I came to a moment where I wanted to de-idolize the original material. So as I said, the compression is really violent on this soundtrack. We have tracks in MP3 with a bitrate of 128, 160 kbps, which is a very good reason for that. We had limited space on CD, but which de facto implies creating compression artifacts and leads to a somewhat muddy and imprecise sound. And the sampling rate too, which is 22,000 hertz, leads to the fact that there is nothing to hear above 11,000 hertz. So just reminder that human audition is roughly 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So the music does not shine, and it feels like veiled. And the bass register, the low register, feels even more generous in this concert. So what I said to some players as a joke, that if they want to have the same feeling as when playing the remake, they can just put a towel on their speakers. It will just cut the high frequencies. And honestly, it does the trick. I tried it. It's funny. There was also out-of-phase stuff in the original soundtrack. Just look at it. And I think we can agree that it cannot have been an artistic desire from the composer. Yeah, let's compress the music and make it really bad sounding, technically speaking. I'm not talking about the artistic side here. But all in all, players don't care. This is David Godinov. It's really, he's really famous in France, this guy. I love him. Players don't care about those technical considerations, and they even feel that the music is more authentic this way. But still, those technical constraints give the music a certain color that must be taken into account. At the end, we have been mixing the music to Pharaoh New Era with those constraints in mind, mainly to avoid exhausting the player's ears, obviously. For example, the soundtrack to Anno 1404 was a really good reference to have a soft, silky sound that you can listen for thousands of hours without getting exhausted. Then, the arrangement, it was one of my favorite part. So obviously, it was impossible to go against the original music. I had to respect the original material, so the players don't Liam Neeson me for destroying the music of their childhood. So it was a lot of virtual instrument programming. It was a lot of virtual orchestration, so it sounds alive and organic. And when I say orchestration, I mean like using the orchestra, really. there were a lot of choices to make. Like the goal is to make the music sound the same as it sounded before, but also to make the music feel fresh. I tried to extend the original musical gestures, like the dynamics. When there were improvisation, I tried to provide that sense of improvisation. There was also a lot of phrasing, a lot of characters I had to keep, but to push further so it feels really musical and in nowadays standard quality. And also, I tried to embrace freedom where it was necessary. As I said, there were some things that you could do at the end of the 90s in video game music, like having a long fade out for 1 minute on a percussion loop where nothing happens but percussions. And I try to do my own choices with that. I personally hate long fade outs at the end of songs. I feel like it's some kind of laziness. It's my own taste. Don't take it personally. But yeah, embracing freedom was something I tried to do when it was necessary, like adding some new harmonic elements when it was not too overwhelming, when it was in front of the original material, maybe add some melodic elements, maybe some question and answers between two instruments, maybe add some counter melodies, etc. And those are stuff for my own pleasure, because when I manipulate a music material that is not mine, I really like to make as if it were my music in the end. Like I want to feel at home even if it's not my music. All of this took around 3 months of work, which is roughly 4 hours to arrange 1 minute of music. So let's listen to it. Same track, arranged. And so on. So, there is one thing that is clear, and I think you are too polite to tell me what the problem is, so I'll do it for you. Yeah, those melodies sound really like crap, and I'm staying polite as much as I can, and it is really sad because, as you probably know, that melodies are really important. So, and you probably know also that it is really difficult to create spirited and expressive melodies, even more for solo instruments using only virtual instruments. Even more difficult when you don't have any knowledge of Middle-Eastern phrasing, ornamentation, etc. So for me, remaking a synthesizer soundtrack with better synthesizers is not enough, and I really felt that we had to go the extra mile on this particular subject. But first, we have to make a detour. And here's my trigger warning. I am going now to tell you about an important yet very tricky subject, that is cultural appropriation. I, however, have a disclaimer to make first. As much as I am good faith in my approach, I am not the most legitimate people to talk about this particular subject, and that is for 2 reasons. First, as you can see, I'm a cis white male. I belong to a privileged category of population that never suffered from cultural appropriation. And I am no anthropologist nor sociologist, even if I studied sociology for 1 year when I was in college. And thus, I may say stuff that is oversimplifying or misleading on the subject of cultural appropriation. Normally, I don't. This has been proof-checked, but if I do, I am sorry. If you feel that this particular subject is something that is important and that needs further investigation, I urge you to seek for precise informations from reliable sources, and there are tons of them. So, what is cultural appropriation? It's a term used to describe the taking over of creative or artistic forms, themes, or practices by one cultural group from another. It is generally used it is in general used to describe Western appropriation of non-Western or non-white forms and carries connotations of exploitation and dominance. From the Oxford reference, from a country that did not make cultural appropriation at all. Another definition from French sociologist Éric Fassin is, what defines cultural appropriation is not only the circulation of ideas, after all, borrowing is standard practice in art, and art knows no border. It becomes appropriation when this flow is part of the context of domination to which we are blind. And this context of domination to which we are blind is the most important part of this definition. We are blind to it. And doing such things leads to this kind of thing. Obviously. So, here are some examples.
Let's go!
Yeah. This is an example in Super Mario 64, and here are a few examples in the original Pharaoh soundtrack. And so on. So, this may sound like some cherry picking, but I'm sure there are plenty of more recent examples that you can find. Sitar and tablas are from India. We can agree on that? Is that okay? If you have other sources, just tell me. But in my mind, and probably in the mind of Indian people, this comes from here. It has nothing to do in a level with sand and pyramids and Horus eyes and whatnot. And it just perpetuates the idea that the East is a giant ball with everything is the same, from North Africa to India. And I love Super Mario 64. It has reached a point where it's even a... I don't know, it's warm. French subtitles, nice. But in fact, we have been doing this for so long that we don't see the problem at all. Like I said, like Éric Fassin said, we are blind to it. So here's an example from the opera Samson et Dalila from Camille Saint-Saëns, Ronron, Baguette. It's 1877. It's beautiful, that's not the problem. And it's jazz mode, Phrygian dominant again. No, not a second time, thank you. Thank you, hobo. The way we do it always makes those borrowings an exoticism and something that is seldom taken seriously. Spoiler alert, this has to change. It's all the more surprising that we are part of a culture, and I mean the video game culture, that is not always considered as something serious. More and more these days, I know, but it may still be considered as something not serious. Or worse, it may be seen as a subculture for dumb, lazy teenagers who don't know what real culture, real art is. For what reason would we do to other people what we wouldn't want anybody to do to us? And I just want to be clear, I'm not pointing fingers nor accusing anyone, nor I am attributing malevolent intentions to Keith and Henry, who wrote the soundtrack to Pharaoh, nor to anyone else in the making of any content that may imply cultural appropriation. As Éric Fassin said, it's a process that we are blind to. I am just trying to make an assessment on the way we are working in the Occident as soon as we decide to evoke foreign cultures in works of fiction, even more in games that might give the impression that they are teaching things. In the case of Pharaoh, this is some kind of game you could consider as serious because it's difficult, you have to think a lot, and it takes place in a very detailed environment with some kind of encyclopedia that teaches things about ancient Egypt. So you might have the idea that everything that is in this game is authentic and real, which is very different, for example, from Metal Slug. There's one guy who was working on Metal Slug Tactics, which is released next year. He came to me and he said, yeah, there is this level in the desert with camels, with machine guns, and yeah, there is some kind of, do you find it disturbing that there is some kind of parody of Mid-Eastern music? And I'm like, no, because it's Metal Slug. Like you said, there are camels with machine guns mounted on them. So we know it's a parody, we know it. But in the case of Pharaoh, it's a bit different. I'm going very quickly on this. You all know, I know that you know about the Western equal temperament, and you know that I know that quarter tone exists. But still, they are very rare in Western music, apart from contemporary music. But you can listen to King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. So here is the Western equal temperament, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. And here is an example of what you can have if you want to create a keyboard with quarter tones. Messy, isn't it? When you go to, when you dive into the Mid-Eastern musical structures, which are called makam, but the name changes from a region to another, you discover that they don't have the same temperaments. They have some mobile degrees, like when you go up a scale, you don't play the same scale when you go down. And basically, in these regions, you walk 100 kilometers to the east, and they will play things very differently from where you came from. Well, so we are talking about quarter tones here, but for example, in the Pharaoh soundtrack, we sometimes use 12ths or 16ths of a tone. So just imagine for 1 second what keyboard we would have with 16 tones. I know I still can tune my VSTs in quarter tone scales, but still, I wouldn't know how to use it in a musical manner, which is a very subjective sentence, if you ask me, let alone respectful and faithful to any of these musical cultures. It would have required years of study, and I only had 6 months to do my job, my work. So, it's time for a little test. It seems unrated, but I will give you maybe 3 minutes to insert the object A, B, and C in their respective holes inside the thingamy below. Go. Okay, next slide. I love this strip from French comic artist Gottlieb. I feel it represents perfectly the way we work in Occident as soon as we evoke foreign cultures in works of fiction. Either we shoehorn a complex musical system into ours. What I mean shoehorn is like hammering it until it breaks. And this way we tend to rub all the asperities and authenticity out, which at the end gives an aseptic version of these cultures, or I dare say an acceptable version for Western ears. Oh yeah, this sounds Arabic for sure, as soon as you hear a high Hijaz scale with no quarter tones, because quarter tones, yeah, that sounds wrong. Or we oversimplify the content and we end up giving a simplistic image of these cultures, as if they were too small for our Western artistic frame, which reinforces the idea that the Western musical system is superior and more evolved, and it's obviously not. The Western musical system is complex, but on different subjects from the Mid-Eastern musical systems. So, let's get into the second part of the problematic and look at my iron boots. That's to say how I try to deal with these issues. And I'm on time, that's perfect. So first step was obviously to convince the publisher to double the music budget to allow recording session. Just so you know, I'm going quick on this, but that can give you some ideas. I simply hired 2 musicians for a day of recording sessions to show how much better it is when we have real musicians in the loop. I can give you more details and tips on this later if you want. You can come to me, and that's really okay. But I really showed that it's worth it, even more in this context of traditional music. So I went for an approach of what I call reappropriation. So the goal was to give the floor back to concerned musicians and give them the freedom to interpret this music as much as they wanted, which is good sport, in my opinion. Obviously, the means were limited, and when I say means, I mean time and money. I didn't have an infinity of choices. I couldn't go to Egypt for 6 months to find traditional musicians who make musical reconstitution of ancient Egypt music. It was impossible. So we aimed at a blend of instruments from Middle East in the broadest sense. So instruments from Egypt, obviously, from Syria, Turkey, Armenia, etc. And we did not aim for an absolute precision, ethnologically speaking, since we have very narrow knowledge on ancient Egypt music, and I don't think Western ears would have been ready for that anyway. We know some of the instruments that were used in ancient Egypt, but we know the sistrum, which is a percussion instrument. We know they had some kind of a harp, but we didn't have much that would have been able to play the music I had. As I said, I couldn't go against the original material. And then we went to the studio with this wonderful team of musicians. As you can see, some of them are French, but the French musicians were mostly there for less traditional stuff, except for Nicolas Siva, who was French, but who lived maybe 10 or 15 years in Morocco, and he even changed his pseudonym because he feels almost more African than French now. Well, and it was really, really great, and I thank them all for the result. And then we went to the studio. The recording session was 3.5 months of work in 2 months, really, so don't crunch. We had 35 days of studio, which was amazing. There were a lot of preparation, like creating music sheets, a specific Cubase project. Yes, I use Cubase. Logistics, finding the musicians too, was a big part of the job. I had to do the recording and the musical direction, a lot of editing. My advice on editing, if you have to record musicians, don't keep more than 2 takes. This is from the guy who had to choose between 4 to 9 takes on all the instruments on 2 hours of music. It was 70 hours of editing, 2 weeks of work, because of my will of, yes, I want to have the choice to have the best result. Won't do it again. 2 takes, no more. 1 sound engineer and 1 assistant to help me concentrate on the music and nothing else. I didn't want to have to think about, is the microphone in the best place? I didn't want to have to choose the microphones. I wanted to be in front of the computer, press record, discuss with the musician, and that's all. We had 15 people that work on this soundtrack, and everything was declared and paid. Back then, we were in the middle of our second lockdown in France, so the musicians were more than happy to have the opportunity to work legally. Very important thing, if you go to the studio for recording sessions, there is a lot of non-musical work. There is paperwork, there is logistic, accommodation, transportation. I can only urge you to delegate all of this if you can, because it can be very time-consuming. And if you have to do this, count this as working time, for God's sake. I didn't want to have to book train tickets or to book Airbnb for the musician. I wanted to concentrate on the music, so I paid someone to do all of this. It was really nice. I didn't want to have to go to the train station to pick up someone at 7 in the morning. No, I needed sleep. And obviously, some arrangement needed retakes to match instrumental constraints. Some of you started creating music with virtual instruments. and then brought the music sheets to the musician. They were like, I can play that. Your computer can, but I can't. Well, it happened too. I had some songs that that couldn't be played in their original keys. Just like, for example, do not write a melody in Hijaz mode in A flat minor. Never, ever. This just doesn't exist for these instruments. So some songs were raised half a step, or sometimes we simplified things, or I just modified the arrangements so the instruments were in a better place musically. I'll go really fast on the instrument we used, but there were a lot and it was amazing. Those are traditional flutes from various places. Those are Turkish bombards. Yeah, it can play forte and forte. Just so you know, on my Fireface you see, for all the instruments, the gain was like at 32. It wasn't 15 for this instrument. Obviously, we did some duduk and balaban. We used some Turkish clarinet. And sometimes things that have no name, like this tiny 70-year-old flute that was given to Saddam by his grandmother, which is made of reed. And sometimes we would mix some of these. I had no idea it was possible. Like some notes that I wrote were too low for the duduk. So Saddam took the mouthpiece of his duduk and put it in the clarinet upper joint. And it sounded good, so we called it the clariduk or the dudinet. I don't really remember. Sometimes he was extending the ney, this flute right here. He was extending the tube of the ney with lower fingers to have lower notes. Sometimes he was playing the duduk, and on the bottom of the duduk there is a hole that you use to tune the instruments. And he filled it with his belly. It was amazing. Those musicians have a lot of creativity when it comes to instrumental creativity, yeah. Nothing is sacred for them, but just playing music, whatever the means. We have some Qanun, which is not a far-right complotist group from the USA. We've got, obviously, oud and violin, which is obviously not Egyptian, but yeah, there is the rebab, which is some kind of one-string violin, but sadly the musician broke his 3 weeks before. The violin was mandatory because some melodies was played by some string instrument, and I hired Case for that. As you can hear, it doesn't really sound like the classic violin that you can hear everywhere. His phrasing is deeply rooted in Middle Eastern musical tradition. And he even told me that he didn't like classical at all. So it was fine by me because it sounds amazing. Then we had the percussion. I won't lie, this felt like kindergarten. I don't remember. Yeah, there is some daf, there is some darbuka. That's pretty much all I remember. Yeah, some rik too. But it was like, the guy came with his truck, it was like, I have all of this. I was like, nice. I don't want to sound as I am teaching lessons, which is ironic considering me being on this stage in front of you. The result is inevitably another form of cultural appropriation, but I hope it is a lesser one. For me, it's more of a kind of a conversation between Orient and Occident. Western composers originally wrote something they consider related to Mid-Eastern music, and then Mid-Eastern musicians played this music the way they wanted. This attempt to give the floor back to concerned people was an approach that the musicians actually liked and appreciated. This is something I was really worried about. I didn't want to sound like the classic Toscanini guy saying, yeah, play this, but yeah, no wrong notes, please, just straight notes. I tried to show maximum respect and humility to those musical cultures I knew very little about, while aiming at making the music as faithful as possible to the original material. And yet some people took this approach as an attack. Whatever. Yeah. And the result After 5 weeks of mixing and mastering by someone else, obviously, I didn't want to do that myself. It was some songs at like 120 tracks. Not my job. And then the result, 60 tracks in high definition wave, 2 hours of music. It's nor better nor worse, it's just another version. Yes, I still use Winamp in 2022. What about a comparison between all the materials? Yeah, my favorite. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for thank you to every musician that play on this. Saddam on the Turkish clarinet and all the wind instruments. It was really, really amazing. And I am out of time, so no, not a second time. Thank you. Thank you, Hans Zimmer. Yeah, it's time for takeaway. So first of all, this is something I didn't cover in my talk because it was already too long. First version is 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I didn't talk about what is it to deal with pressure on such a big project. And there were a lot of pressure. We can talk about it. Do not hesitate to come to me and we'll discuss that. But don't be afraid of the IP you are working on. This won't make things easier or better. If you can take a step back from social medias. You can't please everyone. Haters are gonna hate anyway, and plus they are gonna be vocal and rude about it. So obviously be careful with appropriation. And when I talked about cultural appropriation, but be careful with appropriation on every subject, not only the cultural ones, and on every level, that's to say graphics, music, scenario, character design, etc. Always interrogate biases, and accept that there are things you don't know. You can and you should hire and consult concerned people, and hire musicians if it is possible or relevant to your project. And make sure you have time and means to do so, because sometimes it's not easy to access the network that includes relevant people. And in the end, do your best, and everything is going to be all right. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer it now, but I think we are out of time, or later, and do not hesitate to contact me by any means necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louis. It gives me boobs. Boobs.
Thank you.
I love the topic and the instruments and everything. Are there any questions from the audience? We have time for 2 questions.
Yeah, perfect.
There's one.
I love that you loved your own jokes, and you could see that you're really passionate about what you're doing.
I'm trying, thank you.
No, it's really, really good.
Fantastic talk.
Thank you.
We're working on a project that involves Norwegian folk music, and unfortunately the composer isn't here today, but will be tomorrow. But it got me thinking that we might be going into a field where we're doing cultural appropriation on ourselves, kind of. And I've been, I guess, for my own sake, a bit like, yeah, fuck it, let's get some guttural sounds in there. Let's do this and that because it'll sound cool. This really was an eye-opener for that we might be sort of laying out the train tracks for the rest of the future in the wrong direction. So I just wanted to sort of note on that eye-opener. And do you have any thoughts about that? Like we're doing Scandinavian music, and we're taking instruments that doesn't exist anymore. Viking music, how does that sound? So we don't know. We kind of have to make it up a little bit. So any ideas you have on how you approached it? Seeing you have also ancient music to create. You have to create something that doesn't exist, but it did exist. How did it sound like when it existed? And that whole sort of problematic.
I'm not sure. Could you just rephrase it?
Yeah, sorry.
And slowly, because I'm French, so anything that is not baguette is problematic to me.
And I'm a quick speaker. I'm just thinking a little bit about how you approached it when you're designing music that is 3,000 years old.
Yeah. I had no way to reconstruct music from then. First of all, because we have no trace of this music at all. We have traces of instruments that were used, but no trace of what the music sounded like. I heard an article. I heard on the radio someone was talking about maybe some Coptic songs from monks in Africa that might be really close to what the music actually was in ancient Egypt. But for me, it's pure speculation. I know that other people in universities in Egypt are working on historical reconstruction of ancient music Egypt, but it's not really. Well, the results are not out yet, and it's more. It's work from universities, so not accessible for us. And also, I had the original material. I couldn't go against. My aim was not to recreate music from. It was just impossible. I just wanted to put all the sitar out because it's not the right region of the world, and just to tell some musicians, well, you know Middle Eastern music traditions. Can you play this as the most Egyptian you can do with this music? And those guys knew. They were, I can play this maybe the Tunisian way, or maybe a bit the Syrian way. And they tried to play it the most Egyptianish, if that means something, as they could. That's all I could do. But plus, with the means I had, if I had 3 years and hundreds of thousands of euros, maybe I could have gone to Egypt. But it was. I'm not sure that answers your question, but. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I think there was a question just in front of you, Chris.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. So I was wondering, with all this remaking of the old soundtrack, did it also change some way how it was implemented? Because I can imagine, like in the old game from '98, it was pretty much just playing one track, then thinning out. Did you do some?
No, there is no implementation wizardry. It's playing the same way. There are playlists for each mission that plays random music in the playlist. And I asked at the beginning of the project, I was like, do you want to add a layer of interactivity? Do you know Fmod? And they were like, no, it's a remake, so they wanted the game to be as close to as possible to the original material. So no, it's just different playlists that are different from mission to other, and there is a random playlist, and with it alternates with some ambient tracks, but nothing like that. Right. It's a bit sad, I know. Yeah.
Just one more quick question, if that's okay. So you mentioned that these flutes that you recorded, that you could not play in A. They could not play in A flat major, for instance. So they had to play in A major, for instance, right?
Yeah. There was one track which was called Enquete, which was in G sharp, E jazz.
But did you consider just to pitch down?
I pitched it up, yeah.
Okay.
Because it was okay with the mood of the song to pitch. I could go to A E jazz or G E jazz, but
right.
I discussed with Saddam, the musician. He told me, yeah, A jazz or G E jazz is either way is okay. And I felt it was more upbeat in A major. It went with the character of the song. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry, we actually are running out of time,
but we can discuss.
Super approachable.
I'm still there for 5 weeks, so we can discuss. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we'll have a short break, and some food has arrived. So let's eat again and be back at 4:20 for a panel. Okay, are everyone ready for the last item on today's program? Because we've come almost to the end. And the last item is a panel about how audio can function as an emotional design element. Let's welcome to the stage today's speakers Nikki Rapp and Erin Holmes, and tomorrow's speaker Maria Jose Felix, with Oda Tilseth being the moderator of the panel. A warm applause.
Where are you gonna go? I don't know. What do you want to say? I don't know. Go. All right. Hello.
No, it's okay. I just left my phone.
All right.
We're so prepared.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a common thing in that a lot of people hear about, but at least in my at least Twitter bubble, and I guess my network in general in games, emotional design is something that is being talked about more and more. And so I thought, why not do a panel about that when it comes to audio? Because mostly people talk about game design in general, how can the game design affect what players feel, and some designers are now thinking about what they want to evoke in players before they start designing the mechanics of their games and stuff like that. So I thought maybe this is something we should think more about for audio too. Or maybe it's something we're already doing subconsciously, and it's nice to talk more about it. So yes, here we are. And that's the topic of the panel. First of all, yeah, we've all had our introductions, I guess, so we don't need to really spend much time on that. But yes, really lovely talks today. I'm looking forward to the one tomorrow too. Yeah, let's just get started, I guess. The first question that I had here was, what does emotional design as a concept mean to each of you?
Well, I mean, I guess I can come from a standpoint of what I hear from the people that play the games. And I hear a lot at Comic Cons, and people sending me messages and things about how they're affected by design and by the audio in games, and how connected they feel to the characters and the music, and how it provokes strong emotions with the writing of characters, with the performing, with the music and everything. It's really profound for the player. For me as an actor, like when I come in to do it, I don't really know everything till it all comes together in the end. But when I do see it, I'm like, whoa. It's amazing. The editing, the music, everything coming together. It does create a lot of magic for people. I don't know if that answered any question. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think, a lot of why we play games and why we're so, attracted to them is because of that emotional connection we tend to feel through them. Because games, for a lot of us, are an escape, right? And it's like the sense of immersion that we want to receive out of a game that, wouldn't be possible without emotional design. So I feel like that's such a crucial element to game design. And if you're not really, if you weren't really thinking about how it emotionally affects the player, then I think you wouldn't really have a really compelling game. So as far as, audio goes, I think, once again, it's like a very, very big element because people are always so moved by soundtracks, or like we've mentioned before, it's like there are a lot of audio cues and in sound design that tell us what to feel. So I think that's just like a base level of game design, really. And then it's just about like taking it further after that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly what they both said. Connecting to the player, following the emotional curve of the game, because most games, have this like a story, right? And you want to follow the story. You want to follow the highs. You want to follow the lows. You want to make the player feel like the characters are feeling. You want them to experience emotions. And the way to do that with audio, it varies depending on if the music, the sound design, the voice acting. But we each have our own tools to help make that happen. And I think that's the emotional design, knowing when and how to use those tools to help the player feel part of the game.
Yeah, cool. Do you often have talks with other team members or like the game designers and stuff about what you want the game to feel like, both for music and for the voice acting or for specific sound effects? Is that something you do regularly?
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I definitely, that's a conversation that's had like all the time. Maybe it's because it's something that I'm personally focused on, but at least in the teams that I've worked with, it has been like a very big focus. And maybe it's more common too now that people are starting to focus on that more. And also I think that when you're designing sound or a piece of music for a game, that's my first go-to question to game designer or someone in narrative or something, is just like what are you trying to evoke out of the player? What do you want them to feel? And then I try to cater my sounds to the discussion we have around those things.
Yeah, I think it's one of the first conversations that you have, because you don't want to have the graphics and the music or the audio clash. You want them all to go towards the same direction, towards the same emotion. So yes, whenever I start working on a project, it's one of the first conversations that I have. Like, what is happening here? Where are we going? How is the character feeling? Or how do we want the player to feel? Maybe the character's doing something, but we want the player to feel differently. So yes, it's one of the first conversations that I like to have.
Shoot, I mean, I feel like I come in at such a moment where I just, say stuff, and then you guys make it magical. The music amplifies everything with the audio and the editing and everything. And I think the most amazing thing about what we all do is the emotions that we bring out of people and all the elements of that. I mean, yeah.
But I feel like voice acting is a big part of it, because the script can say something, but the way you say it.
Right. Yeah. True. I don't know. I feel like you guys are the.
Yeah, but you definitely have to have those discussions, right? You have those discussions when you're doing it. You're like, oh, so like, what is this character supposed to be?
Yeah, like what is going on? And the thing is, with when I record a lot, everything's kind of out of order sometimes. So like I remember specifically with The Walking Dead, like I was like, okay, what degree of anger is Lily at right now? And and luckily a lot of times like they would have Clementine's voice come in for the final season especially, so I could hear what was going on, and that helps a lot too. But it's like when I see the final product, I think it's everything together. Because I think the voice acting, I mean, it's super important, of course, but I think it's like you guys, it's like, sorry, I'm really jet lagged right now. But yeah, it's very, everything together is like a puzzle pieces. And
you glue it together with your voice.
Yes. Yes. True. I help.
You're selling yourself short.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Are there any specific aspects of each of your works that you pay specific attention to when you want to evoke certain emotions?
I mean, absolutely, but no, I have to
Yes.
think about what.
I guess I can talk a little bit about music. And I pay attention to the characters. I pay attention to if I'm using certain themes and then I want to bring them back, how I'm going to bring them back, when I'm going to bring them back. Because players recognize that, their ears recognize some themes. I think about some instrumentation because, as we saw in the previous talk, some instrumentation can remind you of certain places or of certain eras. So that's also part of the emotional design. I think about different scales, as we also saw in the talk before. So yes, so that's some of the things I think about.
In a similar way, I think I would focus on, in sound design at least, like ambiences, or environmental sound effects. Because, like you said, when your ear is like familiar with something and it makes you feel comfortable or whatever, that's kind of what you can do with the environmental sounds and ambiences. And so if you can kind of evoke that sort of feeling of comfort or discomfort using those things, I think that's kind of an essential key to evoking emotion, depending on the scenario. That's just the first thing that comes to mind, at least.
And I think too, musical themes for characters, like you hear a certain note or you hear that and you're like, oh shoot, here they come. Like, that kind of thing happens too. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful. So are there any specific ways that you've been thinking about, like, how can audio affect what players do or how they interact with the game? And how could you use the music or sound design or even voice acting as well in directing players to do certain things by evoking emotions in them? Is that's something you've thought about?
One thing that just came to mind is actually kind of within the realm of interactive, like utilizing the fact that we have an interactive medium and more technical approaches that I'm not, super knowledgeable on, but just utilizing like certain scenarios, certain sounds in certain scenarios that maybe will help trigger, those sounds versus when the scenario shifts. It can kind of alert the player without obviously alerting the player, but just, once again, maybe if it's using those ambiences and, it's kind of a derelict, kind of spooky place, and it can kind of shift based on what you hear to alert the player whether or not, they should feel fear, or, if there's birds chirping in the background or something, maybe that's like a bit of hope or something. So I think utilizing just technical sound design, using the advantage of technology to be able to like help dictate those things. I feel like I just went a little off track, but anyway, I'll just pass it on.
No, I think you're right on track. I think the interactivity is a big part of it. And I kept thinking of like a boss battle, and it's a boss that you can't beat. And then you move to another place and the music is calm and the ambience, like you hear the birds and you're like, oh, okay, this is a safe space. I'm good here. So yeah, I think you can redirect the player to, move towards you want them to go using a little bit of sound, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like with a lot of the Telltale games, it's like a choose your own adventure kind of a thing. And you can make a choice about like, what do you want this character to be? Where do you want it to go? Like, all that kind of thing, too. You can make a safe choice or you can make a not so safe choice. and, you know, the music will be evil, or it'll be like, you know. I mean, so, yeah, the writing to lead to what is going to happen, and then the audio, you know, amplifies it.
Maybe you'll hear an evil laugh.
Yes,
or-
yes,
You're like,
exactly,
"Oops."
exactly.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've been involved in like game design discussions in general, not just for the audio, from the team early on any projects where you've had the chance to get audio to be like integral part of the game design to evoke emotions?
Yeah, for myself, I don't know if you were about to.
No, go. I'm like thinking.
Okay. I guess I feel like there have been a couple scenarios where I've been really lucky to have that. Sometimes it's not so nice, where you get thrown in at the end, and then we're just like, okay, catch me up on what you want, which is fine too sometimes. But it's nice to get thrown in at the beginning, so that if you do have, you know, more technical skills to set up the whole audio system, or if you have someone who can help you with that, you can do some really cool things and discuss. I mean, like I said, you know, with the game designers, just like, what do they want, and how do you want the audio to shift in these spaces? And then we can say, oh, well, hey, like, we can have the audio system. There can be a state shift, you know, in these moments of danger. The whole audio system can shift to that state. And, you know, we'll talk with the engineers and the game designers, and we'll see, like, what types of states they want, and just learn the types of, just the feelings that they're trying to evoke from each scenario, I suppose. So it's, like, really useful to have those conversations very early on, if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also been involved sometimes since the beginning, and sometimes more towards the end of the project. And the project is always better when audio is introduced at the beginning, because you can help make these design choices, and the audio can help build the game as well, which is going to produce like a more cohesive game at the end. But sometimes, you know, especially indie developers don't want to introduce audio at the beginning because they don't really have much for us to go on, so they feel like, you know, we're not gonna work right away because we don't have anything to work on. But it's something that would just be really good for them to just start introducing audio at the beginning.
Shoot, I mean, I wish I was more in on the beginnings of things. I've never been a project like that. I do my auditions and I wait, but I would love to know more about like how the music is created to fit the scenes and everything, and then all the mechanical stuff of the editing, like what is going to cause the most emotional impact in things and stuff. So I know I bring like my emotions into it and stuff, and I find too when I hear about games, like some of the takes that they choose for me are the ones where I make like a weird sound or something that is more natural that I'm feeling as I'm playing the character. So I think that also helps too. Yeah.
And I feel like you coming in at the end also is helpful for the people who have seen it for so long and haven't really been able to step out and see it from like your perspective.
Oh yeah.
Because you're able to like react in a way that maybe they didn't think, and then they're like, oh wait, that's actually way better than what we wanted.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really cool. That's cool.
Have you ever had a chance to like shape a character with your emotions?
I mean, when I was in The Sims, it was all about that. And when I would do that, it was like we would do 10 to 12 takes of every emotion that the sim would have in any given situation. So that was a lot of emotions, and you guys would decide which one you want, what frame of mind you were in. But I feel like when I did Tales of Monkey Island, when I got the audition for that, they just said in the description that they wanted the character to be a cross between Cameron Diaz and Rosario Dawson, which I didn't really understand how to translate that into like a performance for me. But like going over the script, and I was reading, oh, Morgan Le Fay, she's a fangirl. Like she like loves Guybrush. Like, so that's the part I played out, and that's why ultimately I got cast, is because I added something a little bit different than they were describing, I guess. So you never know.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of fun because I guess I did create something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Are there any specific emotions that you find harder to work with than others?
I find harder to work with complex emotions. So it's always easy to work with happy and sad, right? But recently I had to work with nervousness. And nervousness is not bad, and it's not good. So how do you do that with audio? So yeah, I think just that, like complex emotions.
How did you approach that?
I approached it by not using specifically like major, not minor scales. So I used like suspended chords and a lot of tremolo strings, stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you?
I mean, I get real tunnel vision when I'm working in the booth. I'm just in it. And I don't know, I think the only way for me to do it is to throw myself into it. Whatever the emotion is, I just have to be in it. And I don't have any judgment on myself. You just have to do it. And, you know, I have found, like personally, The Sims was a lot of good therapy because I'm playing an 8-year-old kid. I got to have tantrums all the time, which is awesome to be an adult and have temper tantrums. And then
In your closet.
when I was in The Walking Dead, I mean, that's a totally different, opposite personality to me. But there was something about getting that anger out, her anger is really strong, but it's something that, you know, it kind of is a release. So I don't know, does that happen with you guys? Like when you're working on the stuff and you feel a release working through it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But emotions, it's like, emotions are tricky, but I think the only way is to embrace them and go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like, I wouldn't say there's a specific emotion that I struggle with, but maybe it's more so trying not to fall into cliches of those and find a way to be effective with those emotions while being subtle, if it's, you know, maybe if it works with the topic or project or whatever it is. I think trying to find ways to be just as effective with emotions that we're trained to hear a certain way or see a certain way. It's difficult to break out of those patterns of that, but still be effective, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any specific ways that you can remember where you had like a breakthrough moment with a sound that you felt like, oh, this is the right emotion for it, finally?
I have to think on that one.
Or with music, or with a voice as well.
I remember when I was doing The Walking Dead. I mean, that was such a profound experience for me, but LaJory was there, of course, and he was telling me, like, I don't know how many of you guys have played it, but there's a scene where my character, Lily, like, shoots somebody in the head, and it's super intense and crazy, and I guess I was completely just losing my mind when I was recording it, and Jory was like, yeah, we were worried we were gonna have to pull you out because I was just so deep into it. But like I said, it's just, that's the way, I think, because I don't have life experience with that. So you just have to like do it. So for me, I mean, I don't know a specific sound or anything, but it was, once again, just being in that emotion and going with it without judgment. And it turned out like, you know, I left that session that day, and I don't even remember driving home. I just like went home and crashed. I just like had to take a nap. Yeah, because you're just so, and it's enthralling, you know. And it felt kind of magical to have that feeling, but I know he was concerned about my well-being. But hey, gotta do it, you know. Yeah.
I would say it's like a kind of, what comes to mind is a similar kind of situation where it's not necessarily one specific thing, but it's kind of the unknown, I suppose, in a way. I think, I kind of lost my train of thought, but it was based off something that you had said, had made me think of, I think the times where I've felt that sort of like maybe breakthrough of like, this makes sense, were the times where we were kind of just like throwing things around and it was just a happy accident maybe, just kind of exploring things, and then it's like, oh wait, this works really well. So no super like exciting breakthrough, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same for music. Sometimes you are like in the zone, and it's this idea that you can't let go of until you finish it, and you're like, this is it. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say.
I feel like those times happen when I'm not focusing on it, you know, for a long time. Maybe I take a long break away from that one thing that I've been trying so hard to figure out, and then I walk away and try to forget about it, and then I come back and I'm like, the first time back, it's like, oh, there it is.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So I think now we are able to take a few questions from the audience, if anyone has any, before we have to round off.
Yeah, just a comment, I guess, to Nikki, and especially appreciation for you were the first one of the first people we recorded after Dave, who was the first actor, and working with you and having your kind of compassion and patience, and it really also helped us hammer out how the rest of the sessions would go, and you also set the bar, kind of how the rest of them would. What we kind of knew what to look for and what we could expect. So just wanted to say thank you so much for your help there.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's so kind. Thank you. Thanks.
Any more questions?
Anyone want to talk about emotions?
Yeah, there's a lot of emotions there.
Emotions.
No, to see it from two different perspectives. Your instrument, your voice. And that's so different from a sound designer's point of view, where we use technology and our brains to be creative. You're using your body and your vocal cords to really express that. It's super interesting just to listen to the different perspectives. I love it.
That's cool.
Thanks.
Very cool. Thank you.
Come on, Frederick. Got a question.
That was it, I think. Okay, so I think then that means we actually kind of have to start rounding off, because it's 10 minutes until we have to be out of here, basically. But thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For sure.
Thank you so much to the panel. It was great. I'll keep it this short too, because our awesome sound guys have another job right after this one, and give it up for them, by the way. I think we can all agree that it's been a super inspiring day with several eye-openers along the way. And I want to thank today's speakers and panelists, the audience, both here and back home, There's been such a good vibe and so many good questions along the way. Thanks to our volunteers and to Jungs, and to our co-presenters, NFI and Soundly, our sponsors, Elias, Raw Fury, Viken Film Center, and Chaotica Eyeball. I hope those of you who got a gift get to use it. And thanks to all our supporters, Funcom, Virke, Sony Music, Hyper Games, Krillbite Studios, Deeppad Studio, Snowcastle Games, Noneda, Norsk Komponistforening, NOPA, Media Hamburg, SSMG, and Megapop. So tomorrow we'll be back with more great talks and presentations, as well as the first ever GACO Awards. So don't miss out on that. Now it's time to relax and mingle. Thanks so much again, everyone.